What is going on, Alabama fans? We are back for another edition here at the Alabama Football Report by Chat Sports. Coming up on today's show, Alabama's fall camp is officially underway. They've been practicing a couple of days already now. So we're going to go and we're going to look at second-year players and also transfers. So these could be, redshirt freshmen. They could be sophomores, or they could just be guys who are going into their second season now as transfers for the Crimson Tide. Who's going to break out? Who's possibly going to contribute for Alabama this season as those second-year players? We're going to talk about all that here on today's video. Before we get into that, though, want to make sure you guys are subscribed right here to the Alabama Football Report by Chat Sports. We have officially added one more college football channel here to the slate, the Tennessee Football Talk. Joey Peterson is our guy for that. He is a Tennessee Vols grad there. So we have added another one to the fold. As of right now, we are still number 2 in the pecking order here. My goal is to be number 1 amongst all college football channels here at Chat Sports. So we got to catch Michigan. We're about 8,000 or so away from catching them. To help me out, stay up to date on all things Alabama football related, whether that is, recruiting, any news or rumors that comes out. We've got you guys covered, as well as watch parties this year. So do not miss out. Hit that sub button for me right now. All right, let's get into some of these second-year possible breakout, guys that are just going to contribute, do a little bit better than they did last year. The first one is going to be Keon Sabb. And you're like, Chris, what are you talking about? He played last year. Yeah, but he only played like half the season because he ended up getting injured. And, honestly, I genuinely think this Alabama secondary, this Alabama safety room, going to be one of the best in the SEC this year with Keon Sabb and Bray Hubbard. You look at, what happened last year with Keon Sabb, just the things that, transpired with the injury and everything like that. I think he would have gotten better as the season went on. Obviously, had those 2 interceptions in the first game of the season there, but, petered off a little bit as the season ended up, going on. So I think a lot of that was just first year, not just at Alabama, but first year in a new system entirely for everybody. So, like I said, I think going into this year, Keon Sabb is going to be a whole lot better. And Matt Miller of ESPN also had this piece a couple months ago. We've actually read this, same exact quote a couple of times here, but, it's about his potential to go off to the NFL draft after this season, saying Keon Sabb made an impact this past season. After transferring from Michigan before suffering a season-ending injury in October, the 6'1", 206-pound Sabb has 4 interceptions in 2 college seasons and is the size of a prototypical NFL safety. He has top 50 potential. I think the biggest question for Keon Sabb going into this next season is, what is he gonna be like coming back from injury, from breaking that foot last year. So I want to hear from you guys down at the pinned comment of today's video. What is your confidence level in Keon Sabb returning from that injury? Let me know what you guys think. Scale it for me 1 to 10. 1 on the low end, 10 on the high end. Get down there and let me know what you guys think. All right, the next player here along the defensive line is going to be Jeremiah Beaman. And I think, there's only really a handful of these guys that you could really go down. And I think if you do this list, if anybody does this list, Jeremiah Beaman has got to be on this list because, you think about to what he was coming out of high school. He was listed coming out of high school, 6'3", 259 pounds. Well, now in his second year at Alabama, he has added 55 pounds since his senior year of high school. He's listed right now on the Alabama website as 314 pounds. So just, growing into his body at the interior of that defensive line. He is going into his redshirt freshman season. Only played in 3 games last year. Only played 30 snaps. But I really think that Michigan game was one that really does stick out to me for Jeremiah Beaman. He played in the Wisconsin game and in the LSU game, but at the end of the day, didn't really contribute a ton in those games. That Michigan game, I thought he had some really good film during that game. Also a former top 100 recruit, number 13 defensive lineman, number 8 player out of the state of Alabama back in that 2024 class. And just this defensive line room overall. I do think he's probably going to be your third interior defensive line, but just the way Kane Womack and this Alabama defensive coaching staff likes to mix things up, likes to, change different things up with different looks and everything like that. I think Jeremiah Beaman is definitely going to be one of those guys that really breaks out and is going to have a really good year contributing for Alabama behind Tim Keenan and James Smith this season. All right, we'll continue with a couple more players here in just a second, but first want to give a shout out to our friends over at Fanatics. You guys can get this Alabama-Columbia quarter zip today. It is on sale, pretty much 50% off at this point. It is $45, was listed at $90. Like I said, you guys can get it at $45 right now just by going to chatsports.com/BamaQTRZip. That's BamaQTRZip because it's a quarter zip. And like I said, it's Columbia as well. I understand it's hot right now, but right now's the best time to get cold weather stuff on sale because once it gets in the cold weather time, it's going to go back to $90. So you might as well get it for 50% off right now. Only $45 at Fanatics. Just go to chatsports.com/BamaQTRZip. I'll put that link at the pinned comment of today's video as well as the description of today's show as well. All right, next up, let's go over to the offensive side of the ball here. Let's go with Rico Scott. Rico Scott is one of these wide receivers for Alabama this year that, man, a lot of people are really, really excited about him, and I am too. And, one thing about Rico Scott, I don't necessarily just think that he is going to be, playing wide receiver for Alabama. I think Rico Scott has a really good opportunity to go out there and make a name for himself either in punt or kickoff return as well. Especially with the depth that Alabama has right now in that wide receiver room, I'm sure he's going to get on the field. He's going to get his reps on the field, and he's got to get his opportunity on the offensive side of the ball. But some of these younger players, Nick Saban talked about it all the time. Special teams is a place where you can contribute and really create value for yourself. And I think, considering what Jeremy Bernard said about him the other day, I think whether that's punt return or kick return, I think he has a good opportunity to contribute in one of those aspects. Jeremy Bernard yesterday after practice saying Rico's been great. He ran 23 miles an hour, 23 and a half miles an hour, something like that. That's moving. That guy has put in a lot of work within the weight room, within the off-the-field stuff, and he just continues to improve. He asks a lot of questions. His knowledge of the game has expanded. I'm really excited to see what he's going to be able to step up and do for us this season. Like I said, Alabama's wide receiver room is absolutely loaded right now with Jeremy Bernard and Ryan Williams and transfer Isaiah Horton. Jalen Hill's coming back from injury. Cole Adams is going to be coming back from injury. I think Cole Adams is super underrated. When you need a first down, if it's 3rd down and 5, and you need somebody to, just be consistent and get open, Cole Adams, the other guys as well, but Cole Adams is that ultimate utility guy there. But, I think Rico Scott's going to be able to contribute for Alabama, getting catches and everything like that. But I do think, whether it's kickoff return or punt return, I do think Rico Scott has an opportunity to contribute there as well. And, to be fair, nobody's actually asked the coaching staff. Nobody's actually went out there and asked Kalen DeBoer, hey, who do you guys have planned back there, for kickoff return or punt return? We'll talk about another guy here in just a second as well, who might have an opportunity back there. But I want to hear from you guys. Would you like to see Rico Scott returning kicks, whether that's on kickoff return or punt return? Let me know what you guys think. Type Y for yes or N for no down in the comment section of today's video. All right, next up, let's jump back over to the defensive side of the ball. We're going to go with Zabian Brown here as a second-year breakout candidate. You're probably like, Chris, what are you talking about? He kind of broke out last year. Well, I kind of agree with you on that. He did break out last year. He was incredible last year as a true freshman for Alabama. When you talk about his PFF stats, man, obviously everything is, you take it with a grain of salt. It's whatever. But a 70.7 coverage grade for a true freshman in the SEC is absolutely incredible. Just think of it more as the range, not the specific number, 70.7. Think of it as the range. When you're in that range, that's really good. No matter if you're a senior, no matter, what age group you are, that is really, really good. And I think going into this season, Zabian Brown, I think the biggest question for me with Zabian Brown, it kind of reminds me back to Malachi Moore. I understand they're kind of playing different, positions specifically there. But if you remember back in 2020, Malachi Moore had an incredible freshman season, played over 700 snaps that season. But then his sophomore year in 2021, that snap share went down to 495. And then in 2022, it went down even more, 381 snaps in that season. So while I don't think that's going to happen to Zabien Brown, I think he's going to be that guy that contributes and just keeps getting better for Alabama. I think that's just kind of in his DNA. That does happen to guys, and hopefully it doesn't happen to Zabien Brown, but the SEC is a very, very tough conference to play in, and there's a lot of guys like Cam Calhoun as well on this team who is very experienced as well. So we'll see what happens. Really hope Zabien Brown just kicks it into another gear this year. Obviously, he was good last year. Hopefully, he can be even better in his sophomore season. So let me know down in the comments section. We are going to be very positive mindset on this question here. Will Zabien Brown have a sophomore slump this season? Type in for no or type H in if you think, hell no, this kid's going to be absolutely incredible in his second year with the Crimson Tide. Get down there and vote down in the comments section. All right, I'm kind of going to cheat on this one a little bit here. Second year breakout, Ryan Williams and Jaylen Mbakwe. When you talk about Ryan Williams, I only bring up Ryan Williams because what he said on his live stream the other day about, hey, I had a lot of stuff that I was dealing with last year. He was going back and he was kind of live streaming, watching some of the games from last year and, just constantly running for touchdowns. Oh my God, the kid's, 17 years old. He's 18 years old at this point now. But man, he's a guy that really should be going into his freshman season in college here. But last year, when he should have been a high school senior, 48 receptions, 865 yards. The big playability, we all know what it is. We saw the Georgia game. We saw every single game, basically, that he played in. One of the biggest things, I think, for Ryan Williams is he going to be able to keep that consistency throughout the entirety of the season. Obviously, the beginning of the season last year just, went out and, was doing his thing, was on fire. I think there was a lot of things, whether it was the quarterback situation, maybe he was even dealing with some injuries as well. But this was the exact quote here from Ryan Williams the other day. He said, y'all just don't know. Everything that I was dealing with last year, Lord willing, got a lot in store, but this wasn't nothing. Talking about how he played last season. So hopefully he's just going to be able, remember back to the springtime, I don't think it was anything serious whatsoever, but they did shut him down during the springtime. I think that was just keeping him healthy. He might have been banged up, a little soft tissue stuff there, but hopefully he's going to be able to have a quarterback that ends up getting him the ball consistently because it just frustrates me every single time, I go on Twitter and I see these highlights of Ryan Williams just running wide open down the field, and unfortunately, last year, he just did not have a quarterback that could consistently get him the football. When you're talking about Jaylen Mbakwe here as well as a second-year breakout, I thought last year, I thought he was very good when he was able to get on the field on the defensive side of the ball for Alabama. I will say I don't necessarily think moving to wide receiver with the guys currently that you have in that wide receiver room was a good move. It might have been a little bit of a mistake because I think this year's probably going to see the field a little bit less, but I do think Jaylen Mbakwe is another player that could go out there, could play punt return or kickoff return for you because he is a very dynamic player with the football in his hands. You guys remember back to his high school, film, he was, playing quarterback, playing running back, returning kicks, returning punts. I mean, him and Ryan Williams in the state championship game playing against each other combined for 9 touchdowns in that game with 1,000 yards total between the two. So, while I do think it's going to be hard for him to get on the field as a wide receiver this year, I think he can be a guy that contributes on special teams, whether that be kickoff return or punt return as well.